Hi, and welcome back to White Noise. We know it's been a while, but we're finally back with our Black Mirror ranking. We recently did a Black Mirror episode, but that was on the latest season. We thought for this episode would take a bit longer, and we'd talk about our rankings of every episode of Black Mirror, which of which there are quite a lot now. And due to that, we thought if we both did our individual rankings, like we did for the latest season, we would be here for far too long and people would get a bit bored. But so to avoid that, what we've done is we've collated our rankings to create a typical, tier list. And I think we're going to start from the bottom, aren't we, Sky, and work our way up to the top, so you can stay tuned until the end and see our favorites. You might disagree with some of our picks. I mean, even me and Sky disagreed ever so slightly.
Yeah, well, we were putting it together. We were like, oh, we really do share one brain cell. But then there were a couple we were like, oh, okay. So if you would like us to also release our individual tier lists, because we do have those on like our social media, let us know.
Yeah.
Might do it anyway. It depends how justified we feel in arguing our points with a couple of them. But they were mostly similar. I think the good thing with a tier list, as opposed to a ranking, is that with a tier list, like there's a little bit of give with where things fall. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I might not have put it exactly in this one, but it's not far away from where I think it had gone anyway.
Yeah, it made more sense when we joined our rankings, didn't it, to do it as a tier rather than specific spaces, because we could agree on a tier, but not necessarily, oh, this is in 10th and this is 11th, which we did find.
Yeah, I don't know if this episode will be happening if we'd had to go for ranking. So like where these episodes fall in the tier list isn't an indication of like, oh, this one in this particular tier is better than this one in the same tier. It's not that. It's literally just they are groups as tier lists work. You probably all know how tier lists work. I've actually never done one before. So I'm just going off what I've seen other people do. And like Leanna said, we're going to start from the bottom. If you're listening to us on Spotify, sorry if it gets a little bit confusing. We are going to be uploading a video version to YouTube that will have a visual that will be easier to follow. So if you want to go check us out there, that might be a bit easier. But saying all of that, I guess it's best to just jump right in and start with E.
Yes. So, F. We have an F list.
Oh, do we?
Yes.
Oh, we have a... Okay, am I looking at the right list? Okay, Leanna's going to lead this episode because I'm already confused.
Okay, so basically, I'll start each category with our general thoughts on those episodes. So F are basically the ones where we just feel we don't really get much enjoyment out of them, or we don't feel that they're good as a Black Mirror episode, so the one that I feel like every single person on planet Earth would agree deserves to be in this tier is Maisie Day.
I think some of the newer episodes we really are not going to have to say a lot about, because as Leanna said, we already did do a latest season of Black Mirror ranking and review in our previous video. So we said all we kind of had to say about Maisie Day. But like Leanna had already kind of said, it just didn't feel like a Black Mirror episode. It really didn't. And it's just not one. I guess when it comes to a tier list as well, the biggest thing is like, oh, would I go back and watch it again? Maisie Day? Absolutely not.
Exactly. And that's why it belongs in F. So the next one is Bandersnatch. I know that could be a bit more controversial.
You didn't know whether or not we should include it. I remember when we were going through them. I think it needed to be included because if we're talking about things that didn't feel like a Black Mirror episode but still respecting that they tried something new, you have to include that.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, I really appreciated what they were trying to do, like you say, and I'm a sucker for anything that's kind of like 80s visuals, a bit camp. Will Poulter was pretty good in it, but it didn't really do what it meant to. I think if they wanted to do something like this again, maybe they should just try and make a game.
Yeah, for sure.
Which actually, now saying it, that would be pretty sick, a Black Mirror game. And I bet you anything they're working on one as we speak.
I also want to know, like, how many people actually watched like the entirety of Bandersnatched, or like Bandersnatched?
Bandersnatch.
I don't know where that came from. The entirety of Bandersnatch, because I'm pretty sure most of us, definitely myself, I think I played it through, watched it once, and then I went on YouTube and watched all of
I was just about to say, I don't think many people actually did it. They just watched other people do it.
So if you did, let us know, and why. Like, what made you want to actually go through all of that again? Because it was just didn't work for me. I wish it had.
Another thing I felt that way about was Metalhead. I think a lot of people do love it because of, let's be real, probably the visuals. But I don't think black and white equals good.
Ooh, I agree, but that's gonna make some people.
I know. Like, don't get me wrong, it suited the vibe of the episode perfectly. It was a brilliant choice, but it didn't mean that it was good.
I
You know?
agree. I think it also just took out like it just I don't know. It's one of those episodes I really couldn't remember when I was going through them. Like I had to rewatch a fair few to really think, oh, where does this fall on my tier list? And Metalhead, I could not remember for the life of me. As I was watching others, I was like, oh yeah, no, I remember this one. Oh, I remember this
Yeah.
one. Some of them ended up actually being a lot better than I remember.
Yes.
Because I think one thing that might be a little bit obvious in our tier list, the higher up we go, is where Netflix took over from
Yes.
Channel 4.
Hmm.
Because me and Leanna have already said briefly, I think in the previous episode,
Hmm.
Channel 4 is where Black Mirror was just, it was,
Or even necessarily like that first Netflix season is pretty good as
yeah,
well.
for
It's
sure.
when it became a bit too stylized, because if you think about the beginning of Black Mirror, yeah, there's some style to it, but that's not actually as important as the contents. And then you look later on at ones like Metalhead and it's clear what started happening. So I don't hate Metalhead, but like you say, it's not that memorable to either of us, really.
So did we put Metalhead in the bottom tier? I can't
We
remember.
did.
Did we? Okay. I
Yes.
agree. Again, obviously I agree with it.
um Wait, let me look. Next is Rachel, Jack, and Ashley too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't know what you have to say about this one.
Hate it.
Do you know what? It's really funny. It's one of the ones I didn't actually rewatch because I was pretty confident where it was going to be. I will admit, now I'm not so sure. I do think out of like, because this is the other thing I realized when we were doing the tier list, even the episodes that I thought were like a lot better than I originally thought, they still weren't anywhere near as good as the ones that are higher up. That particular season of Black Mirror as well, with those 3 episodes, because wasn't that when Black Mirror kind of came back after a big break?
Yes, there was like 3 years, I'd like to
I
say.
think
two
so.
years, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like we relate a lot to Black Mirror, just taking like mini hiatus every few months. But yeah, it
Quality.
came it came back, and those 3 episodes are interesting because some people really hated all of them. Some people really liked all of them. And then there were people like us who, I don't know, I feel like maybe because the first 2 episodes of that season I actually thought were quite good.
Hmm.
By the time we got to Rachel, Jack, and Ashley too, I was like, oh, this feels like a bit of a letdown, which is maybe a really good argument for Black Mirror is really something you don't have to watch in order. And maybe
Hmm.
you shouldn't. Maybe you really shouldn't.
I agree, just because you might start to notice a dip in quality. I mean, the latest season was pretty good again. But I mean, sometimes if you watch something like Black Mirror in order, you actually do start to, because you're losing interest, because it seems like the general trend is they're getting worse, you might actually give later seasons less of a chance
I
than you
agree.
would have if you watched them out of order, you know?
So, just a quick insert edit here. This might be a bit choppy depending on how Liana puts it together. But Liana was actually wrong. We've already gotten confused with this tier list. All the episodes we just talked about are in our E tier. There
Mhm.
is no F tier. I knew there was no F tier.
No, F tier was Maisie Day. Let's just
Okay.
say that.
Oh, all right. Okay. F tier was basically. So, oh my God, that just, me and Liana were just trying to figure it out, and it felt like doing algebra at school. Just to clarify, again, maybe this is an episode you really want to go watch on YouTube because the visuals are going to make it so much easier to follow. All those episodes were in our E tier. We're now moving on to our D tier.
Yeah.
Leanna, are you going to be able to start that, to talk us through it?
Okay. So I'll stop laughing like an old man. Our D tier, I'm going to start with Men Against Fire. I don't know really what to say about that. I wanted to like it, but it felt a bit vapid.
I think it was one that was trying to, because that was the one with the roaches, wasn't it?
Yes.
So I think it was kind of like it thought it did this big twist.
Yeah.
And like so I had seen all of these episodes before, but like I said, I really couldn't remember them. So I was rewatching some of them. And one of the ones I rewatched was Men Against Fire. And even from I didn't remember anything about it, but even from the beginning, I was like, oh, well, obviously they're seeing the people wrong, like
Yeah.
so they can fight them. So when it like got revealed, I don't know, I was like,
Just felt
I don't
obvious.
think I was like, I don't think that was quite the take that you thought
And
it
it
was.
also didn't feel like the unique thing it thought it was, because at the end of the day, like if you've ever seen, say, Starship Troopers, it does the exact same thing. The whole point of Starship Troopers is propaganda, nationalism, and being brainwashed to think of the enemy as these vicious creatures, when actually the whole point of Starship Troopers is that these aliens they're fighting, like, it's their home planet. They're really the invaders. And that film doesn't treat it like a twist. It's just satire. So you're aware of that the whole time. And I guess that's one of the problems with Black Mirror sometimes it takes content and ideas that don't really need a twist. Some things are just satire. They're better without a twist, but I think Black Mirror has started to really rely on them in later seasons. Because when you look at earlier seasons, some episodes like are so brilliant because there isn't a twist. You're just slowly getting into it. So like, I don't know, for example, like let's say the entire history of you. There's not really a twist there. You know
It's
what's
just a good
coming.
build. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think maybe like Men Against Fire would have been better if it was more built that way, rather than trying to act like this thing that was really obvious was a twist, because like you say, it wasn't.
I think media in general is kind of suffering from this at the moment. Like,
Yeah.
it's not called The Cabin in the Woods, but it's Knock at the Cabin.
Yes. Yeah.
Similar thing, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, because of who made it, everyone was expecting a twist, to a point where I saw people reviewing it saying, oh, the big twist in this film is that there isn't one. It's like, no. I was like, not every single film needs to have a twist to be interesting. At the end of the day, when you watch something, all you want is to feel justified for watching it. So you need a payoff. Okay, so you either need the lovers to get together, the good to overcome the bad, or sometimes for the bad to actually realize they're not the big bad. Payoff doesn't always have to be a big twist you never saw coming, because they're really hard to pull off. Like, I don't think people should be judged as writers or directors or creators because they can't pull off a big twist. It's a hard thing to do. The latest series of Black Mirror, maybe because it's starting to feel like everything's been done now, and something that we also mentioned in the previous episode is that I personally just don't think that Black Mirror is actually focusing on current events like it used to.
No, true.
Like, it used to focus on, because obviously it used to be like tech was the thing, but then sometimes it would be like something really, not even necessarily something really niche, but something that you don't think about day to day. It's just always in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
It's like eating away at you, like an existential crisis.
Well, yeah, that's why I think episodes like The Entire History of You did so well, because you know, being able to fixate on memories, that's something that's so human and everyone does. And the whole point of that episode is just, what if you were given technology to exacerbate that?
I just think the way it was done, the time it came out, it just didn't hit. It was, like I said, it wasn't the worst. It's not in E or F, as Leanna's decided to call it, but it's so it's in our D.
Yes. The next one is the Waldo moment, which is just another one where
I would have to double check, but I'm actually sure this might be one of the first ones we couldn't really agree upon.
Yeah.
Because I actually think the Waldo movement, I don't know if I put it higher than D. I think this is why we did end up coming to like a stalemate with it, because I was like, oh, I do agree. I don't think it's as good as, say, some of the ones we have in our C tier. But I did think it was better than, like, I did think it was better than Men Against Fire, for example. I thought it was a lot better than Men Against Fire. And I think that one was also very much a product of its time. It felt very Channel 4 still. I don't think it was part of the Channel 4 era, but it's still
Waldo moment's like season 2, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it still felt very Channel 4 then. I guess that'll be why.
Maybe because it was.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it was very topical at the time and still.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, if anything, it became more topical over time. And that's something I think that Black Mirror's lost. Black Mirror now kind of like looks backwards more than it looks forwards in a weird way. I don't know if some people would disagree, but I really stand by that. I mean, look at episodes like Maisie Day. Like, you know, paparazzi culture, don't get me wrong, it's still horrific, but it is not at the peak it was, say, 10 years ago. I felt like the Waldo moment, it was the kind of thing where it's not great, but it was something great to be like, whoa, and look at during, say, like the Trump administration.
Yeah.
You know, it's got that similar thing to like The Simpsons, where maybe an episode isn't necessarily good, but you're like, whoa, that's so uncanny.
So the next one is Striking Vipers, which I think a few people may disagree with us with, because I've spoken to people, like I've just spoken to people in my life about this tier list we were going to do, because, you know, we've been planning it for ages now. And when I said where Striking Vipers went, they were quite shocked.
Mhm.
Again, I think it's a product of, it's just not as good, in our opinion, obviously this is our opinion, as the other ones we've put
Yeah.
higher. But Striking Vipers is one, when I rewatched it, like when I first watched it, I was like, oh, Black Mirror's back, baby. Like it was like the first, it was because I think it's the first episode of that season after they took a break.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then I rewatched it again and I was like, huh.
You know what a
This is
lot of it
just
is? I think the fact that the first time you watch it, it's almost like not funny, but just what? Like you're a bit taken
yeah.
aback. So the second time you watch it, you don't have that element anymore. There's nothing to keep you excited by it.
I
And
also feel like the biggest thing with that one was the ending for me. Like,
mm,
I don't know, I just didn't find it very believable.
no, I felt the same. I also think that it didn't really have a message. Like, what was the point of it? Like,
Yeah.
what was the point of that episode? But one merit to that episode is how much it got memed.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, you
For
just had to
sure.
be there. Twitter when that episode came out was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, that's why, like, when it first came out, it was like, oh, this is a good episode because there
Yeah,
was so much built up around it.
I
Whereas
completely
now,
agree. I think it wasn't actually good. It was just there was so much you could say about it.
mhm,
You know, it's similar to say something like 12 Reasons Why, not a good piece of media, but there was so much to say about it. Euphoria season 2, there's plenty of
mhm,
pieces of media like that, you know.
mhm.
Good
I've also just
conversation
realized
fodder, but
you said 12 reasons why. Do you mean 13 reasons
30
why?
reasons.
Rihanna, get your head in the game.
I can't.
This is what happens when we go out, like we just take a month off to do stuff. Like we just forget how to talk, apparently.
The ADHD brain coming out.
Yeah,
It's coming to play.
so true. But yeah, no, but you are right though.
Mhm.
And I think with Striking Vipers, it's one of those that, like, when I watched it again, I was like, this is actually a bit silly.
Yeah, no, it
It's a
is. It's
little
very.
silly. And
And
not
you can
silly in like
have
a fun
silly.
way.
Exactly. I was just gonna say you
Yeah.
can have silly and it still be good, and this
Mhm.
wasn't that.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong, I love silly stuff. It's just,
Yeah.
it was silly in the sense that it didn't fully make sense to me. Like, yeah, I got the point they were trying to make. Um, and I don't know, maybe this is like the queer agenda coming through. But I guess it's because obviously the whole thing was like these two guys don't actually have any physical attraction for each other. They just have really good simulation sex. But that really made no sense to me because then
Mhm.
the guy talked about how he had tried the same thing with other players
Mm.
and it hadn't worked. So obviously it wasn't that the simulation just made sex better. It
It was
was who he
them.
was doing it with.
But the other thing that got me about that, that's got nothing to do with tech. Like I get that tech makes I think maybe not in a game would have worked. Maybe like something to do more with social media because there is a very real thing that some people are like really flirty over social media and it's hot. And then you meet in real
Mm,
life and that same chemistry isn't there because you can be someone else behind a screen. I think
yes.
that would have been a much more interesting concept
Mhm.
than I fuck my mate in a game when I'm playing a female character. Like it's just
That's fair. Actually, no, I completely agree. I think that would have been so much better. But this is why,
Mhm.
like you said, like the memes were just gold
Oh, they were so
because
good.
it was just like just having a game night with the bros. It's just pretty funny.
Like, yeah, babe, just in COD with the bro.
But
But
yeah, the episode itself, unfortunately, I feel like that was the fandom building it up and like making
completely.
funny stuff out of it.
Yes.
Because then topping our list of D again, not that these are in any order, but Joan is awful.
Mm, an interesting one, I'd say. I think you liked it more than I did, for sure.
Um, maybe. I think it was just because out of, like, this is again when you have to put it into context. Like, putting Joni's Awful in the context of its own season, it
Mhm.
was one of the better episodes. Putting it in the context of the entirety of Black Mirror, it was one of the weakest ones. It suffers from, like we've already said, the fact that because it's a new episode, similar stuff had already been done. It had
Yeah.
also been done better and more subtly.
No, I agree. And I also think like I'm actually quite interested in the whole season idea now that you've like said what you just said. It's interesting how some people remember certain episodes being better or worse depending on the season they were in. That's actually fascinating. And I think that lends to the whole thing we were saying earlier about maybe watching it out of order.
Mhm.
You might actually find your tier list is very different. I
I
might
mean,
do that in the future.
if I had gone off, again, this is also needing to actually have a good memory, which I
Mhm.
don't have, but going off of like just my first viewings of them, this tier list would have been
Oh,
majorly different
yes,
because there were
completely.
some episodes I judged way too harshly. There are other episodes I just forgot about entirely. I don't know why I forgot about them, because they were actually really good. So yeah, I guess it's the thing of a tier list though. Like it's really not set in stone. This is
No.
just a general idea of where we think
Yeah.
they fall.
And by the time the next season comes out, maybe we'd do another ranking and it'd be different again. But we will see.
I would say so.
So on that note, we are now moving on to the C tier. This is
We're
where,
getting into the end game.
yeah, this is where we start to disagree a little bit more, I would say. Where, you know, we've agreed on our rankings, but it's where making the ranking got a little bit more, you know. So first one I'm going to talk about in C tier is Demon 79, which is, I would say, the first one we properly did like disagree on.
I actually remember now thinking about we put it together, because I definitely liked it a lot more than you did.
Yes, definitely.
Again, putting it in the context of Black Mirror, I get it. Like this kind of goes against what I said about like Black Mirror trying something new, because it tried something new with Demon 79. I don't know if it's just because Demon 79 comes after Maisie Day, and after Maisie Day I was just like so done with it. I almost didn't watch the final episode. I don't know, yeah, I think just as an episode on its own, I really like Demon 79. I definitely wouldn't put it higher than C for sure. I almost could have conceded to putting it in D, but it's only because I could not justify putting it near like Striking Vipers and Men Against Fire. It's not, to me.
No, completely.
It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that completely.
Yeah.
I think my thing with Demon 79 is, it's like I've said to you before, and we spoke about in the previous episode. I think I would respect them creating a new show a lot more than inserting something into a season of a show that already does really well, to be like, let's see if people like it. It felt a bit safe, in my opinion. Like, you could say, oh, it's like too much, like trying to do something completely different. But actually, in a way, I think I'd have respected it a lot more if they did a 3-episode Red Mirror season to kind of test that out, rather than just sticking one episode in an existing show. That feels a bit, almost like a bit lazy to me, I guess.
I see what you mean. To be honest, I was just going to disagree and say, I respect your opinion, but I don't think it's safe. But now that you put it like that, no, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Demon 79, I can completely understand why people would like it, but even if it wasn't in what I felt was the wrong place or home, it's still just not entirely my kind of thing. You love a one-on-one, like not monologue, but you know, dialogue heavy situation, don't you? Which is part of why you loved Demon 79.
Yeah, like, yeah, true. And I love all character dynamic. Like, this is gonna sound really like obvious, but like some of my favorite things in writing are like, yeah, like, was it like insular, like just one, like, not that this was, but like one setting, kind of one shot things. I love those. But because I love characters, I think like character building is some of my favorite. Like you could have like the weakest story or the most basic story ever, but if you've got two, 3, 4, whatever, however many interesting characters, I'm sold. And I really loved the character dynamic between, I can't remember their names now, but the girl and the demon. I love that. I don't know. I love yin, like, give me yin and yang. Give me, and also always, I love things when they subvert stereotypes. So I know it's been done a million times before, but like having quite a camp, funny demon.
Yeah. Now that we talk actually about how you love the one-on-ones and characters and everything, looking at our list, it makes a lot of sense, because viewers, listeners, as you'll see, as we go further up the list, it becomes a lot more character focused, which is especially Sky's influence on the list, I would say. I mean, both of us, but particularly Sky.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you tell that I maybe bullied Leanna into agreeing to a few of these because I couldn't, in good consciousness, put it. I mean, it's funny though, because the next one in our C tier list is one that I think we disagreed with on the opposite.
Yes, I brought it higher up.
Yeah.
Yes, Hang the DJ.
Hang the DJ.
Which is actually super, super interesting, because if you think about it, a lot of people love Hang the DJ a lot more than either of us do. So even though I brought it up, it's still a lot lower than it is for other people. Like, some people put Hang the DJ in like A or B, which I don't, I'm sorry.
Literally, I think at one point got voted like one of the best Black Mirror episodes.
Which I just don't agree. I really do. As time has passed, especially, and I've gotten a bit older, I love the concept of knowing how long you're going to spend with someone. I think that's really interesting. But I feel like maybe that is more like a book or a graphic novel or a webtoon or an anime. Like, I don't think that's a Black
Oh, an
Mirror episode.
anime. Oh, actually, I
You know
think
what I
the story,
mean?
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I feel like maybe
Yeah.
in a different medium, I could get behind it a lot more. And I
Yeah.
really liked both actors. Like, I thought they were both great, but there was just, and I do think maybe the visuals ruined it a bit for me. It was a bit
Yeah.
cheap looking, I felt.
I found it so boring. Like, just to
Yeah.
put it out there completely, I find
Hmm.
it really boring. I wouldn't go so far as to put it in the lowest tier, but I think I definitely wanted to put it in D
Yeah.
because it's one I rewatched, but I rewatched it simply because I was like, okay. At that point, I'd rewatched a couple I thought I didn't like. Turned out I actually did like them. I was like, maybe Hang the DJ is the same. Maybe
Mhm.
again, because of the season it was in and the episodes it followed, I was like, maybe I just didn't give it enough of a chance. No, I think I actually came away disliking it more.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And this is why I'm always so interested to hear from like listeners and stuff like that, because like obviously there's no right or wrong answers, but I'm just curious about hearing from people who really did like it,
Yeah.
because I don't think you're going to convince me. That's not what I mean.
Same. I've read a million reviews, watched a million
Yeah.
videos on Hang the DJ, and it's just
Hmm.
something ain't clicking for me.
But it's just I do you know, but I think that's it. Like with a lot of the Black Mirror episodes, people relate to them kind of like on a more of a individual level.
Yeah, true.
So like maybe I don't know, the concept of you said the relationships, knowing how much time you have with somebody,
Mm,
like that's something people focus on more so. Like it's not really something I ever think about personally.
hmm
And it didn't make me question it either. Like I don't
hmm
know. I think they said Demon 79 Hang the DJ were interesting for us because we were both arguing on opposite sides for them,
Yeah.
and we thought good middle ground. See.
Yes. So next is Hated in the Nation. I'm not sure if you remember. I can't quite remember where we both individually fell on this.
Is that the bees one?
Yes. On social
Oh,
media. I
yes.
really do like that episode. I
Mhm.
love the idea, but the execution was a bit poor.
I agree. I actually really,
And I
yeah,
think that's why it was C, wasn't it? Yeah, I think we
mhm,
agreed that if it was better executed, or maybe like
mhm,
the pacing or something was better.
mhm.
No, I think the pacing was good. I can't remember what it is. Maybe it's like
I
the
think the
actual
thing with that,
writing, the dialogue or
yeah,
something.
I think the thing with that episode, it had a lot of poignant moments in it
Yeah.
that didn't actually have really much connecting them. So
Yes.
like there are very standout moments from it, like the ending where
Yeah.
everybody who had ever made a hate comment was now going to get targeted. Like
Yeah.
that was, I thought, was quite good because like, oh, that's very haunting. Like your digital footprint does follow you
Hmm.
and things like that. The aspect of the bees was interesting. Again, I think even though we do still need to save the bees for sure, I think that was definitely more of a topical thing because at one point, like hashtag save the bees was
Yeah.
just it
It was
for
another hashtag.
for
Yeah.
everybody. Like hashtag save the bees, death to plastic straws. That was like that
Mm,
era.
yeah, definitely.
Watching it like in 2023, I was like, if I hadn't been around during that era, I was a little bit confused as to why it was mechanical bees. But then again, it was kind of interesting because it was doing the whole Black Mirror thing of taking
Yeah.
technology that we've come to rely
Yeah.
upon and turning it malicious.
I think it's interesting because, like we say, that one's dated because it was so of the time. And that's just the thing, isn't it? If something's really poignant and brilliant in the moment, unfortunately, it is just going to age, which means it probably is just going to sink lower and lower in people's lists over time.
Yeah, I
But
think
I'm
so
okay
too.
with that, to be honest with
Mm.
you. It
I
was never
still
like
don't
an S
think
or A for me anyway.
No, oh for sure not. I still don't think it'll go any lower than say like Joan is Awful
No,
or Bandersnatch or
no,
anything
definitely
like
not.
that. I think
Yeah.
honestly I think Hated in the Nation might always sit quite pretty at a C because
Yeah.
I feel like it's one for a lot of people they can't exactly place because it wasn't really bad. It wasn't super
It's
outstanding,
just a
but like
good
it was pretty
watch. It's like a
good.
BBC drama, isn't it? You know?
Like I would watch it. Yeah, I'd watch it again for sure.
One like that, which I've never felt the urge, is Archangel. So
Mm,
that's C as well. That one is interesting to me because I love, love, love the idea. And I actually think, if anything, it's becoming a bit more poignant. But again, it was just a bit boring. I loved the idea of like wanting to protect your kids and getting too intense of it because helicopter parents, if anything, they're just getting worse and worse with all the
mhm,
apps you see. All this huge I don't know how to explain it, like people getting funny about sex scenes,
mhm.
violence, how the fact there's no blood in most Marvel films, even though people are dying. And yeah, I don't know
I
if you
didn't
ever
even think
noticed that.
about that.
Exactly, it's fascinating, which is exactly the kind of thing that Archangel is going on about. It's like violence without
Mm.
the reality, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like
I
shielding
wonder
people
if
from,
Archangel's actually one of those rare ones then that it would have actually performed better
I think so.
later on.
Also, that Jodie Foster directed it, which kind of lends to it being quite severe and intense. Yeah, did you not like
Jodie
that?
Foster
Yeah, yeah,
directed
yeah.
it.
And
Oh,
unfortunately, while I love her,
yeah.
I think she made it a bit too, and this is a weird thing to say for Black Mirror, she made it too dull.
Mm,
Like it's a bit, but I get that because it is just meant to be an everyday mother and daughter, but
mhm.
it kind of went too far in that direction for me personally.
Yeah. I also think that it's not quite the same, but it's sort of similar to the plot of the entire history of You,
Yeah.
which obviously I'm sure if you've been paying attention, we haven't mentioned yet because it's a little bit higher up. So for that reason, even though I know they're not the same exactly, it was a similar premise, and I just think the
Yeah.
entire history of You played with the idea of like monitoring people's memories a lot better.
So good.
But I would 100% support if in a new season of Black Mirror they wanted to revisit this concept, because
Yeah.
I agree, I feel like it could be done a lot better now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think another thing with Archangel, which I do actually like, is that it uses some visuals from other episodes, you know, like White Christmas, Entire History You, those kind of things. And at first, I was super against the idea of making like a one set universe. But one thing I enjoyed in that particular era was that you could really see a natural progression of tech. And I thought that was really interesting because obviously we're going through a very rapid progression of certain tech at the minute. So I like that a lot more than I used to.
So the next one, well, the last one actually in our C tier is Playtest. For me, another one that I didn't actually think I liked. Then I watched it again and I did like it. I was like, oh, this is really good. Also, did not realize at any point until the end of the second rewatch that it's Kurt Russell's son, Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn's son.
And as soon as you said that to me the other week, it made so much sense. He has the
Like
spit.
I was sat there just like, oh, he looks really familiar. Why does he look so familiar? It's like because he has Kurt Russell's face. But Playtest,
Yeah,
did that one we agreed on?
I think it was one we semi agreed on, but you did have a bit higher than me.
I don't know if it's just because I watched. This is the other thing. A lot of me bullying Leanna into some of these episodes is because I watched them more recently.
Yeah, it's a
Which,
bit of
like,
recency bias, isn't it? I
a
guess.
little bit, yeah. Like some of it's recency bias, some of it I just think I'm right.
Mhm.
Um, Playtest, I don't know. Maybe it is more recency bias. Maybe it's also because I was just blown away who was in it and I didn't realize. There are definitely elements of it that are very cheesy,
Mhm.
very badly animated.
Yeah.
But I thought the concept was really interesting. Obviously, it wasn't really particularly innovative.
Mhm.
Innovative. Can't talk.
Innovative.
Innovative, yeah. But I don't know. The ending was just really fucking sad. I'm a sucker for sad endings.
I think the ending was the best bit of the whole game. If I'm going to be game episode,
Yeah, well, yeah. I
game.
also just I love, if you can't guess, which is me and Leanna, we love like writing.
Yeah.
And I maybe it was basic, I don't know, but I loved the fact that like the whole thing throughout the episode is that like he's avoiding a call from his mum,
Hmm.
and like it's like, oh, maybe if he'd called his mum then he wouldn't have been in the situation where he
Yeah.
needed money, so it wouldn't have happened. And then like the final bit is when like she's filling in the form is like, did he say anything when he died, did anything what happened, and it's just said called mum, and it's like
Mm.
that's how it ended. I don't know, that hit me here for some reason, and
It's
I
just
really liked
it's
it.
a small thing that goes a long way, isn't it?
I also really love stuff that plays on fear. I don't know if that's fucked up,
Hmm.
but like, and obviously like it played on very generic fears at first, like it had like the haunted house
Hmm.
and creatures and stuff like that, but then it went into the real fear of, because his dad had Alzheimer's, his fear was that he would then develop Alzheimer's, and I was like, wow, that's
That's dark. Yeah.
that's very dark. And I
Mm.
just thought that was really good. Like maybe I
Hmm.
wish they'd expanded on that a bit more.
It's another episode where you can see the potential, I think,
Yes, it
for sure.
definitely sits very pretty at sea. Seas,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, but C is obviously like episodes that, like I said, I can't justify putting it in D because it just was not on the
Hmm.
same sub-level
Yeah.
as the ones that we put in
No, I
D.
agree.
It is one of those that, like, I think I originally had it in B on
Hmm.
my one. I do think I needed to be talked off a ledge a little bit with it. Like,
Yeah.
I think maybe I was a bit too jumping the gun to put it in B.
I think B
But
was, this is Kurt Russell's son.
yeah, I literally think that's what it was. Yeah, wow. Nepotism.
Didn't realize how much I
Um,
loved Kurt Russell until how amazed I was that
you know
it
the
was
best
Kurt
part is
Russell's son.
it wasn't even until so we did an episode, was it last year?
Mm,
On like the Summer of Aliens, and I'd watched The Thing for the first time.
yeah,
And I'm sure
you
that's where
loved it, didn't
many
you?
people fell in love with Kurt Russell. But
Yeah.
obviously that film's so fucking old. He's been in stuff since then.
Hmm.
I've seen him in stuff since then, but I didn't actually know who he was. And then I watched The Thing, which has like become one of my favorite horror films of all
Yes,
time.
what a film.
So yeah, I am guess gonna have a tiny bit of bias.
No,
if his
definitely.
son's in a if
Yeah,
his son's in an episode of Black Mirror. But that's it for the tier list now. Now we're really going into the big
Kurt
ones.
Russell episode.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, like you said, C is kind of that middle ground. It's the episodes where I think I don't love them, but if someone said they were absolute ass, I would have to kind of be like, but it did have things going for it. You know,
It
they're
had
the
merit, yeah.
potential tier, you know? So going into the next series B, so we're now in the top half of episodes. Yeah, I feel like that's the major thing to point out with B. So the first one I want to talk about is Smithereens. Don't know, it's not like my favorite in the world, but I couldn't put it in C. I think that's another one you liked a lot more than me, but again, it's a character driven thing. It's a dialogue
It's
driven
character
episode.
driven. It's
Yes.
yeah, like so again, it had Andrew Scott in it. I quite like Andrew Scott as an actor, so
Okay.
that's gonna have an effect.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
just is.
definitely.
Star power works. But it was one that, yeah, it was all set in basically it was all set in the car.
Hmm.
I love that because you don't have a lot to play with. So like the writing has to be really good to hook
Hmm.
you. Maybe some people would argue the writing wasn't good. I would say
Hmm.
you were wrong. I did really, really like it. It was
Hmm.
also part of the three episodes along with Striking Vipers and the Ashley 2
Yeah.
one that I think gets forgotten about a lot because people really like Striking Vipers. They really weren't sure about Ashley 2, and then Smithereens just kind of got.
It was like that classic middle child episode, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I will
Mhm.
admit, Smithereens is another one that I guess doesn't really fit the Black Mirror universe or like
I think it's
checklist.
because it's a bit more, it's less about, oh, this demonic tech and tech that it's about tech that already exists. So in that way, it's
Yeah.
similar to Shut Up and Dance.
Mm.
It's not as good. Let's be real.
I will definitely say that.
Yeah.
I also did think the ending of Smithereens was very weak. Like the fact that he literally crashed a car because he was on his phone. Obviously, that's harrowing.
Yeah.
But I think there was just so much build up.
Yeah.
To it that like you said,
It
for
fell a
example,
bit flat.
yeah, like Shut Up and Dance. There is a lot of build up in Shut Up and Dance.
And it pays fucking off.
Yeah, Smithereens didn't really have that. It was very consistent, I think. Like there was tension in it for sure, but I don't think it was any tension you didn't really see coming.
It was kind of like a one-man show sort of thing, and I think that's why Andrew Scott was brilliant casting. I think if it wasn't for Andrew Scott, this would be in C. Let's be real. Because
I'll
of
give
his
that, yeah.
background in like stage acting, he really brought a lot to the episode. And if I'm going to be real with you, I think he is the reason it is any good.
I will actually say that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely made the episode because obviously if you'd had somebody who couldn't deliver the character that you needed, it would have been very boring.
Yes,
and
definitely.
even though he was fantastic in it, I do understand why this wasn't everybody's cup of tea because it was a very specific kind of episode.
It definitely feels like one I feel like the Brits would like more purely because of Andrew Scott.
Yes, true. I also feel like, I don't know, like maybe this is controversial. I think sometimes we're a little bit more patient with stuff.
Yeah,
I don't think it's even necessarily like, obviously I'm comparing us to say like Hollywood here, but I don't think it's even necessarily people's fault when it comes to stuff like that because it depends on kind of the media you're raised on, like nature versus nurture kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like if everything that you watch is like super action packed and like just constantly has like stuff driving it forward. I get why slower stuff isn't your thing.
No, completely. I mean, if you look at the British episodes of Black Mirror, like pre-Netflix, they are just a lot slower.
Yeah, they really are. And like I said, I get why people might think that they're boring, but that's the kind of shit
I didn't
I
realize there's a big thing with like Americans don't like the Channel 4 episodes that much, which is crazy. Like, and that's not the diehard fans. The diehard Black Mirror fans, basically as a rule, love the Channel 4 episodes. But like your casual viewers who are American seem to genuinely prefer like season 3 and 4 to a lot else.
I had a kind of interesting, just slightly go off on a tangent, not that we ever do that. But I had kind of an interesting conversation with an American friend of mine, not that long ago, because I was watching Staged with David Tennant and Michael Sheen. And I was trying to say to her, because she was asking for stuff to watch, and she said, well, what am I watching at the moment? I said, well, I'm watching this. I was like, but I don't know if it's something you would enjoy because it's very British. Like the humor in it's very British. I'm like, it's not like there's like actual jokes in it. It's just the personalities and the situations. And I feel like stuff like Smithereens has that in a drama sense.
Yes.
Like, I don't know. I don't know how to say this without sounding really condescending, because I don't mean for it to. Like, I like all different kinds of media. It's just this kind of stuff really gets me because it like really pulls me in. Yeah, and I guess that kind of comparison of like, there's just no obviousness of genre. Does that make sense?
No, I
don't
get you.
know
I get
what
you.
I'm fully trying to say here.
No, I completely get you. It's like when you
Yeah.
watch a stage show that doesn't really have a genre, it's just dialogue.
Yes.
Yeah. No, completely.
Yeah.
I think and the next episode we're going to talk about, I think, is quite different in that it has more of a set genre, and that is Loch Henry. Loch Henry has been very interesting, quite Marmite from the last season. If you want to hear our more in-depth thoughts about it before we dive in, obviously you can go to our previous episode, which is about the latest season of Black Mirror. I don't love Loch Henry. I really like it. But the thing is, I like anything that says fuck true crime, because I am...
Yes.
And Sky's similar. We both have quite anti-Netflix true crime. But like we mentioned in our long Black Mirror's latest season episode, we both felt a bit icky about the fact that Netflix was getting to take its cake and eat it too. It just felt a bit weird, you know?
I think that was it. It was the fact that, yes, we did like it. It was a good episode. But it was kind of like...
The context around it was...
basically exactly what you said. I don't have much else to say about it. Like, yes, the story was good. It was intriguing. But I feel like Netflix was kind of like, oh, look at us. Like, we do this thing and you all...
Like, we know what we do and we're getting away with it because we're commenting on it.
Oh, yeah. So then, like, liking it feels wrong.
Yeah.
But,
no, completely.
Yeah. But subjectively, taking away everything else, it was a entertaining episode.
The next episode to talk about is Crocodile. I am a big Andrea Riseborough fan, or Andrea Riseborough, however you want to say her name. Obviously, she kind of entered the public consciousness a bit more due to the Oscar nomination. I don't know if you heard about all that, how she was in a really small indie film and she last minute managed to get a nomination for a film that only made like 10K or something. Yeah, it was this whole thing. But anyhow, Crocodile, I feel like, is a really good example of how an actor that seems to like just fade into the background for a lot of people is actually brilliant, because she is the reason Crocodile is good. She is a great actress.
I do agree. Do you actually also think Crocodile as a story was really good as well?
Yeah, true.
Like, it is probably one of my favorite Black Mirror episodes.
Yeah, I know. He's saying,
it still is only in our B tier. This is what I said. I realized the big difference between like ranking and tier list, because it is, I would say, yeah, it's probably one of my favorite ones because I think the story is really good. The ending is horrific, but in like a very
in the best way. Yeah.
But I couldn't justify maybe putting it in A because it is slightly forgettable, and I don't know if that's again because of where it comes in its season, where it comes in the history of Black Mirror.
But
it's I think like a hidden gem. I
think that is partly because in the UK we constantly, as you're scrolling channels, you see lots of Scandi thrillers, and because Crocodile is framed like a Scandi thriller, for us that kind of blends into that. Whereas like maybe for someone who isn't based in like, you know, northern Western Europe would find that style a lot more and it would stand out more for them. I don't know. I've seen too much of that.
It just goes towards watching Black Mirror out of order.
Yes,
really,
true. Very
because
true.
like you'll find these kind of gems that will stick out. But yeah, Crocodile, I don't know. It just had a really great setup. It had a really great build. Obviously, had a terrible ending, but as in the context was terrible. The way it ended,
what
was
happened?
so sad. But the ending was like
It was brilliant.
phenomenal. The
I
way it
also
cut
felt it
off.
was just a bit braver than a lot of
Mm.
the episodes around it because, like we say, the ending is horrific, but it's in a good way. And like that's something I felt like Netflix era kind of shies away from sometimes is being truly, oh my God. Like if you think about the first ever episode of Black Mirror,
We'll get there.
yeah, no, but that's
We'll
what I
get
mean. We'll get there, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of all I have to say about Crocodile, really, other than that's probably the first one where I think I would say, please go watch it if you haven't already, because it's worth it.
I would also say if you're a big fan of Shut Up and Dance and you haven't seen
Yeah.
Crocodile, watch Crocodile because I do think they have very similar, not quite the
Mm.
same. It's not like a big shock
But it's that
exactly.
fear of being watched, isn't it? And
It's the fear of
surveillance.
being watched, but it's even more just like the way the ending happens, the cut
Yeah.
off, the just
It's actually very
yeah.
true. I've never thought to compare them, but they're more similar
I'm not.
than you think when you
Mhm. I'm
boil it
also not
down.
sure which one came first.
Crocodile, I
I
think.
think Crocodile came first. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that Crocodile walks, so Shut Up and Dance could run. That's how I'm going to end that one.
So for the next one, we're going back towards the early days. 15 million merits. I think a lot of people are going to be mad about its placement,
I think so too. It was
but
episode.
I do think though that comes with part of the prayers towards the early seasons. That goes both ways. Like, don't get me wrong, you and me are like kind of like insane for the Channel 4 episodes. We just are, but that doesn't mean they're all unworthy of criticism. I think 15 million merits, don't get me wrong, is brilliant, and I love the speech bit and the glass. Everyone loves that, but the visuals never really worked for me like they seem to for other people.
I think the best way I could describe 50 million merits is messy. It's
Yes.
not quite, especially because, again, we'll get there. This was obviously the second episode of
Yeah.
the entirety of Black
Mhm.
Mirror. It came after the first episode,
Mhm.
which, not to put a pun in, but shocked the nation. Um, and 15 million merits like pivoted completely. It was the first season to me very much felt like a show reel to
Mhm.
kind of show what Black Mirror could do.
Mhm.
So it went from modern day political
Mhm.
to jumped into this dystopian future where
To
we're all
something
living
in the middle afterwards, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So I will admit that I think I am very biased about putting this in the B tier because, like you said, it was the OG.
Mhm.
It There wasn't, as far as I could tell, there wasn't really anything at the time out that was
Mhm.
doing something similar.
Yeah.
And like you said, it did build up it had a very good build up. It all felt very quick, but I
Yeah.
do forgive it because again, it was a new show and
Yeah,
it was,
exactly.
so yeah. I'd be interested to see where like people who haven't watched it from the beginning, even especially non-British viewers,
Mm.
where you would put it, because I do think for a lot of people it's quite a forgettable episode.
Yeah, they either love it or they just don't even
Yeah.
remember it at all, I feel
Yeah.
like.
I think a lot of people actually haven't gone back to watch the
I
OG
agree.
ones.
I think there's actually quite a lot of American viewers, especially who've just never watched the Channel 4 one, which is just so ridiculous to me because it means they're actually missing quite a few of the best episodes, let's be real. But
For sure, yeah.
yeah, 50 million merits. What more is there to say,
Yeah.
really? Next is Beyond the Sea,
Jumping
which
ahead again.
is actually, now I'm looking at it, is the most recent episode to rank high.
Mm-hmm. And
So
I
that's,
ranked high.
getting higher into the list. That is the most
Yeah.
recent one.
Mm-hmm. So I put it, I can't remember now.
You
I
put
think I
in
might put
A,
it,
I'm pretty sure.
I think I might have put it in A. I also think I might have put it as number one on my ranking in the previous episode.
Oh no, you put it in B. So it's still in the
Oh,
right
okay.
zone. Wait,
Okay,
no.
but yeah,
Yeah,
but no,
B.
yeah, I think I might have said it was my favorite episode, and I know I'm not alone. Like
Yeah.
Leanna just said, it was one
Oh
of
no,
the
a lot of people
highest ranking
loved Beyond the
episodes.
Sea. Yeah.
I do think it was fantastic. I think it had a perfect combination of star power.
Yeah.
I personally, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I personally don't think it was overpowered by the star power. I think it was carried by it.
I mentioned in our previous episode, I felt it was ever so slightly, but that's more because I've seen more stuff with those actors in. Remember we were talking about like Aaron Paul, which I kind of liked. What's his face? Josh, the other actor.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I
You know
nearly
who I
said
mean.
I nearly said
What
Josh Groban. It definitely wasn't Josh Groban.
Well, I loved him in it because he's one of those
Yeah.
people, he was a big name, and it felt very like Tarantino to bring someone that deserved a bigger career. And he was also in Oppenheimer recently, and I just thought, damn, this guy's actually like quite a good actor.
Yeah.
Like, so it felt really, it was like vindicating, you know? It
Yes.
was really good to see him in that. And he was great. He was very good against Aaron Paul.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes what happens is they want big names so bad they don't actually cast people that work well together.
Yeah.
Whereas they did.
No,
So
they did for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, especially considering that like their scenes together are actually quite short.
Yeah.
Really, you
Mhm.
see them more individually, or obviously Aaron Paul
Yeah.
being a mixture of the two of them, which was also done very well. I
Mhm.
love that. I really, again, this is a really niche thing to really like and stuff, but I really like when you have actors playing the character of other actors. I don't know. I just think because like
It's
that's such it's so interesting because to me then that really shows like how good an actor is because it's like you're
yeah.
having to play this character but you're having to play it in a way that you probably wouldn't have played it because
Mhm.
every actor will play a character differently, so you have to play it against almost
The
your
other
own
actor.
nature.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I don't
completely.
I
I
love that.
I always think of it as very David Lynch. He's got a big
Mm,
thing of, like duos and
mhm,
twins and like that kind of thing, which I've always found very cool. But yeah, I liked that element a lot as
mhm.
well. Whenever that pops up in any kind of media, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, let's go, baby. I love it. Or when someone's playing the same character but they're different, like they've
Mm.
changed or something. That's always really
Yes,
cool as
the
well.
subtleties, that's what
Yes.
it is. Yeah.
Yes. Anything like that, you've got to love it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anything else about Beyond the Sea?
No, again, if you want more of a breakdown into it, we covered
Yeah.
it in a lot more depth in
Yes.
the Black Mirror season 6
And that is
ranking video that we did.
that's the final name drop of our latest episode. There's no
Oh
more
yeah,
beyond this
oh yeah.
point.
If you didn't know, we did a review and ranking of the
Yeah, you
latest
might
season
have
of
heard.
Black Mirror. Go watch it. But that is also the last episode we have in our B tier, so it is time to move on to our
Do-
A tier.
This is where it starts getting quite yummy, I would say. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where we didn't really disagree anymore. Like maybe ever so slightly, but we kind of were like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
while writing this. So the first one is USS Callister, which is funny because part of me wants to hate it because it's so American.
Right?
It's just
I
good.
again, I like when I was remembering it, I was like, oh no, it's probably not. This is not that good.
But
And
it
then I
is,
rewatched
isn't
it, and I was
it?
just like glued. I was watching it whilst I was cooking dinner, and I think I
Yeah.
like burnt my dinner or something because I was like glued to the
The thing
screen.
is, don't get me wrong, there are some bits which I find far too American and cringy.
Mhm,
But there are other
mhm,
elements I love. Like, I'm sorry, Jesse Plemons is such an incredible actor. Like,
mhm.
we were just talking about playing a character in different ways. The way he
Yes,
goes between being this meek guy
yes,
and then like,
yes.
sorry, no one else could have acted that. And then dude who was in Westworld and It's Always
Mhm,
Sunny is so good as the dickhead
mhm.
partner at the business. And
Yeah,
then Girly from How I Met Your Mother. Like,
yeah.
usually I would be really against this, but it
Yeah.
works really, really well in this episode. And
Do
the
you
fact
know?
that they lent
Yeah,
into Star Trek visuals, I was like, that's really cool, rather than like Star Wars,
yeah.
which is, I don't know,
Oh
Star
no,
Trek to me just
definitely.
feels so much more authentic nerd.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yes, not to like create a huge, war now,
No, of
but I
course.
know I completely agree. Especially
Mhm,
like because like I say, when you think to get stereotypical, but like you
mhm.
think of like a classic nerd, it's like Star Trek is what comes in.
Exactly, yeah.
No, I completely agree. I
Mhm.
also feel like upon my second watching, it really it's gonna sound like a really weird way to phrase it, but it really spoke to me as a woman. Like that whole idea of like interacting with the
Yeah.
nice guy in the
Yeah.
office that
No,
nobody
completely, yeah.
that like everybody shits on, so like you're not even like overtly nice, you're just a
Yeah.
decent human
Yeah.
being, and like for that reason you now owe them
Yeah.
something. And like you said, I think it was just played so well how
Mhm.
like yeah, it's that whole idea of like somebody, I mean, yeah, I do think the people in the office were dickheads,
Yeah.
but it's sometimes
They
like,
didn't
oh,
deserve
maybe,
it, yeah.
yeah, I was like, maybe people don't like you not because of you. Maybe they don't like you because you have actively done things
Yes.
that make them
Yes.
uncomfortable.
Completely. And
Yeah.
it was such an interesting commentary on like incel culture, like
Mhm.
basically what you're getting at. But like,
Yes.
it was so good. Like, it was You know, I was saying about how it feels like Netflix is kind of getting a bit shy from going towards like there's that bit in USS Callister where you see him chuck the guy's son into space. Oh, like, fucking hell! First of all, like that
It
is
got so dark, but
like,
I
yeah,
think like
like
what
it's
you
funny,
said,
but then it has that.
because it has the background of like Star Trek, you
Yes.
don't really expect it to get that dark, and then
Yeah,
it
that's what I
does.
enjoyed about it. You have such highs and such
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean?
And then even the ending of him getting trapped in the game is
Yes.
terrifying.
Yes.
Like,
I
yeah, he
found
was
the
an
end quite
asshole.
cheesy, but in a way, because of what they've been through, it feels
Mm,
very earned. So you can't
yeah.
exactly be like mad about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I will admit the whole thing of them surviving anyway was a little bit cheesy. But like you
Hmm.
said, I feel like these characters had just been through so much horrible stuff. It was like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, you can have that. I also think, at least what you said for British viewers, might be like a give it another chance
Yeah,
for
completely.
sure.
I
Because,
um
yeah.
I think it's the kind of one that's good to watch with your mates. If you're going to
Mm.
watch any Black Mirror episodes with your friends, I reckon that's probably one of them. The national anthem is next.
Do you know what I absolutely love about the Black Mirror fandom is that no matter how you feel about the show or in the individual episodes, everybody's like, don't watch the first episode.
Yeah, I don't get why people say that though, because I think it's fucking fantastic.
That's why it's even funnier though. I mean,
Yeah,
people obviously say it because of the context of it. If
yeah.
you've not watched it and you don't know what we're talking
Mhm.
about, then go watch it
Yeah. The
and you'll
thing is
see.
about like national anthem is it's just gotten better and better with age because
Mhm.
look at the prime ministers we've had in the UK over the last like what 15 years, 10 to
Yeah.
15 years since Black Mirror started. It's just more poignant. Like I'm sorry if Theresa May or any of them lot, like Boris Johnson, if any of
Yeah.
them were put in that situation, the same thing would happen. And that was such a good episode because the tech was real similar to some of the other best episodes, like we said, like Shut Up and Dance and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Is you know, it was set in the real world, and that's why season one was great because it starts with something that isn't out there. Then you get
Mhm.
15 million merits, and then you get
Yeah.
the entire history of you. It's just,
Mhm.
it's beautiful. It's so good.
Whilst it definitely belongs in the A tier, I do think National Anthem also has the advantage of being the first ever episode of Black Mirror.
Mhm.
It set the tone
But it was
for
such a
everything
brave
after.
idea to put that
Oh yeah.
first. Like, you have to really genuinely admire Charlie Brooker for that. And
Mhm.
even Channel 4 to an extent, like they wouldn't do it today. They wouldn't. But
This
Channel
is just what I
4,
was thinking. Yeah.
mm, Channel 4 used to be, I don't know if you like have ever read about this, but I thought it was fascinating. Channel 4, the whole point of that channel was to be a major channel that pushed boundaries that like BBC wouldn't.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I've always thought that was fascinating because they really did do that.
Yeah.
And then they just like if you think about E4
100%.
as well, like Misfits stuff, like you don't get that anymore. And that's why I love the
Yeah.
national anthem, because not just because of the content, but the context of when it came out as well
Mhm.
really
People
leans into
just
the love for it.
don't parody the government enough anymore. Like,
No.
people just don't want to get off their ass and parody the government. It's just no, but it's true. It's something that like 100% would not be made today,
No,
and
completely.
because of
Like
like
to be
the
so critical of the government as well, like not just, oh, haha, look, they're so funny. Like the way that he at first does want to fake it was
Mhm.
so like, oh, like
But
he
it was
doesn't
so
even want it.
clever. No,
Yeah.
but it was so clever as well because they basically like these are the things that stick in my head, but like how he was going to fake it, and then people were more angry with him because he was going to fake it than if he had just said no, I'm not going to do it. And that
Mm-hmm.
was really interesting. I
Yes.
also feel like a lot of the reason this episode wouldn't fly today is because now people just they don't hide, and they shouldn't, but they don't hide their like political views and criticisms behind parodies anymore, like because
Mm,
of social media. People are just very out there, and they're
yeah.
like,
True.
big name actors are just like, I don't agree with this, or I agree with this, or I'm
True.
this or that. Whereas back then it just
It was more of a
wasn't
statement.
it was definitely more of a statement, and like
Yeah.
the only way you could kind of get away with doing that as a creator is if you hid it behind the veil of
Mm,
some kind of
yeah.
creation, because even though the points and the views that you were making were more than likely going to reflect your own, you hid it behind fiction.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's more like you can't really make satire or parody out of it because people are just like, well, yeah, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I also really love about that episode is no one comes out of it looking good. And that's something I think is kind of like, yeah, about later episodes. I know we were just going on about how good USS Callister is, but say, for example, that's much more black and white, who's a good person and who's not. I mean, yeah, there are some grey characters, but still. And like, what I love about National Anthem is you want him to do it because you're like,
Mhm.
fuck the government,
Mhm.
but then you're complicit in his, like he loses his marriage, doesn't he,
Yeah.
you see,
Yeah.
which I actually found really heartbreaking,
No,
genuinely.
well, that's literally how it ends, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
they show that
exactly.
he, like the media shows how he's recovered from it and he's bounced back, and then like
Yeah,
behind closed doors, it's
yeah.
just, of course, it would fucking
No,
destroy the
completely.
marriage.
And I
Yeah.
love that bit where you see the audiences all watching the
Hmm.
screen and
Hmm.
they
And for
just
that
look
reason,
disgusted
nobody sees when the girl
that
gets
she's released.
released, and it's
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, like even though it definitely, as I said, has the advantage of being the first episode, there is a reason that people are like so ooh about it,
Oh, it's
because
brilliant. Yeah.
like obviously the context of it is horrific.
Yeah.
There are other episodes that have
Mm.
had horrific content that people are like, oh no, you should watch, but there's just something about National
It's
Anthem.
such fantastic writing, isn't it?
It
It's so
is, yeah.
good.
Hmm.
But anyway, to stop going on about National
Yeah.
Anthem, because I could do it all day.
Hmm.
Next is Nosedive,
I can't remember which one Nosedive is right now.
the social media one,
Oh yes,
the
no, that one's good.
ratings.
Yes.
So what's funny about Nosedive is I love it and I hate it. So the things
Hmm.
that everyone goes on about loving, like the talking to the friend on the phone and all, those aren't my favorite bits. My favorite bit is like when she's talking to the woman in the truck and she can't
Hmm.
believe that she's off the system,
Yeah.
because that is real. You know, when you talk to someone and they're like, I don't have Facebook, I don't have Instagram, you don't have Twitter, we
Yeah.
have the same reaction.
Yeah. No,
Like,
literally though.
you don't have any social media. Like,
Yeah.
it seems so silly when you're watching the episode, but that is how people are,
Yeah.
which is interesting to me.
Honestly, this is like even become more poignant for recently, because like I'm really having moments of like just having a huge purge. It's like I don't want to have social media
I know
anymore.
what you mean.
But then like it's difficult because like my job requires me to have social
Yes.
media. This podcast requires me to have social media.
Yeah,
And when you connect with the right people, there are aspects that I love.
I completely
But
agree.
then it's like we talk about constantly of that whole idea of being perceived. Like
Yes.
it's a, when you think about it too much,
Yeah.
it's very
Feels like you're on
haunting,
stage.
and
Yeah.
it does. And it's like, but this is like the, you know, the generation. See, actually, our generation is interesting because I don't think we were raised on social media.
No,
We are at
we
that
had a bit
really,
of we had a childhood without social media.
yeah, we were at that really weird bit of like, you know, it was coming into fruition at the
Mm.
time.
But
So
we literally started secondary school the year that Twitter launched.
there you go.
You
So
know?
like it's, I feel like we have a very strange relationship with social media, because it's
Yes.
like, whilst obviously I'm sure people younger than us can feel the same way, social media has always been a thing for them. Like it
Mhm.
is very normalized. Whereas like I said, I still, and I know you still have moments of, this is really fucking weird. Why
Like,
am
why post
I
every moment of your
posting
life? Yeah.
this?
Mhm.
Why am I like, why have I
But
just
have you
shared?
not noticed a lot of people our age, and for listeners and viewers, if you're not aware, me and Sky both in our mid-20s,
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed a lot of people our age are starting to like kind of jump ship a bit. They're not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily deleting their accounts, but they're not active like they used to be. Older people are active, younger people are active, but because we were in that weird middle ground, I
Mm-hmm.
think anyone from the ages of like 23 to 27, 28 is kind of has this weird relationship with social media, like you said, where
Mm-hmm.
it came at a very unique time for us.
Unique. And I think like you just said, pointing out Twitter getting launched when we were in secondary school, it came out at a time when we're already dealing with shit anyway. Like literally when your mind, because people talk about that a lot with social media, they talk about how like it's very bad for a young mind, but I think for us it was almost kind of worse because it's like it was so new
Well,
and
I mean, not to get
fresh.
super dark with it, but this kind of ties into like the Hate in the Nation episode.
Mm,
When we were in secondary school, things happened like when that girl got bullied so much on that anonymous site
mm-hmm,
that she unfortunately did something you can't come back from, let's put it like that.
mm-hmm.
Um, and don't get me wrong, you hear about things today, but it was like an epidemic when we were
Yes.
teenagers.
Yeah.
There is, don't get me wrong, it's still fucked up, but there is more awareness now and safeguarding. Like I think a lot more young people now, don't get me wrong, bullying online is as rampant as it's ever been, but I think a lot more people are aware of how to deal with it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
I think as
yeah.
well, like we spoke about this kind of briefly in our Four Pillars of Fandom episode,
Mhm.
but it's how like when we were growing up, finding a community on online was like very niche and very hard to do
Yes.
because nobody, everyone was under an alias. You
Yeah.
know, nobody wanted to be honest about the stuff that they liked or stuff because you know it
Yeah,
was
no one used their
embarrassing or
name. Yeah.
exactly because people didn't want to get bullied. Whereas
Yeah.
now it's like you said, obviously it does still happen, But a lot of the time, if you've found your community online, that community will come and back you up, and they'll be like it's almost like now everyone's laughing at the bullies because it's like, that's so fucking lame. Like, why?
Yeah, it used to be in our day the bullies were the majority, and now it's like trolls. Don't get me wrong, they have
Yeah,
their area, but like they will get trolled back, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
Or if
They
like
don't.
they are doing it, people are like, well, you're just pathetic,
Yeah, but
whereas
then
once upon a
also
time
there is a
people.
lot more general meanness on the internet now.
Mhm,
So someone will
mhm.
just, if someone makes a point someone doesn't like, they'll quote it saying, "Well, you're fat and ugly," and people find it
Yeah,
funny. And I've never understood that. That
yeah.
didn't happen. I will say I feel like the bad stuff has evolved since we were
Mhm,
young. It's this whole thing, but that's why I found Nosedive interesting. Nosedive was particularly interesting because it was like social media, not from a teenager's point of view where it's just fun. It was from an adult's point of view. So you're looking at things
mhm,
like not just, oh, I like her dress or that she's slim. It's,
mhm.
oh, she's married. Oh, she's got a good job. All those
This is just
things.
it. And it also
Mhm.
really points into, like you said, us being in our mid-20s. It's
Yeah.
like now everything that we posted, because a lot of people experience this when they were younger, is haunting them. They'll, because
Mm,
what do jobs do? They'll find you on social media. They'll look at this, and it's not even like, oh, you posted anything that was like what am I looking for? Controversial
particularly
or anything
bad.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just like, oh, you posted a bit of a messy picture when you went out drinking.
Mm,
Don't want you to work here. Feel like the younger generation, consciously or not, are just more aware of that, and like they do. Again, this kind of goes into the fact that there is still a lot of like people not being genuine, like they're
mhm,
still putting their best social media foot forward,
completely.
so they're not sharing stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, you shouldn't share stuff like that anyway, just for your own sanity, because
Mhm.
it's like hangover anxiety the next day. It's like, oh, what did I post? Whereas
Yeah.
people, I don't know, it's very weird now, because it's almost like, yes, everyone films everyone and everything gets published, but at the same time there are people who are like, we'll call you out if it's wrong.
Mhm.
It really depends
Completely.
what part of the internet you're on and what app you're on as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. And I think for all those reasons, Nosedive, I feel like Nosedive is unfortunately one that isn't as interesting now. It's still a very good episode,
Mm-hmm.
but we've kind of evolved from that side of social media. Like, don't get me wrong, people
Yeah.
still compare themselves, but
Mm-hmm.
people have a little bit more awareness of like, just unfollow someone,
Yes,
you
or
know?
block them, or
Influencer era is kind of fading out a bit. It's more
a
about the
little,
everyday
yeah.
person now with the rise of
Mm-hmm.
TikTok. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that one's kind of a
Yeah,
bit,
I do
you
think
know?
Nosedive though, and the reason we put it in the A part of
Mhm.
our tier list is because it is one that is always going to be relevant. Even if social media all blacks out one day, people are going to look back on what it was. So I do think Nosedive hit a really good middle ground of, like you
Mhm.
said, it's not for teenagers,
Mm,
but it shows maybe teenagers the future they could be heading towards if like
yeah, true.
everybody does become really obsessed with numbers and followers and stuff like
Mhm.
that. It's very poignant for people our age because we're currently living that.
Mhm.
People older, I'm not so sure, because they might find it interesting to just see what they missed. But
Mhm.
I think, yeah, our age, our generation, a little bit older and younger, it kind of hits something for each one.
So next in the A list is Be Right Back, which is one of my absolute favorites. Like Sky said earlier, sometimes your personal ranking and tier can be slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
Be Right Back is actually quite high for me in my own personal list, but in the join list, I think it got a little bit lower. Maybe I'm not entirely sure, but Be Right Back is it's beautiful. I love it. It's
I mean,
heartbreaking in the best way.
it's so heartbreaking.
Hmm.
Like, obviously, the only way it could go higher is S, and it's just, to be fair, there are a few episodes. This is going to sound like a really stupid thing to say, but like, if there were less letters in the alphabet, there are a few episodes that definitely probably could have fit into S list, because they are just really good and
Hmm.
unique. But we had to be careful. So I feel
Yes.
like a few of the A ones maybe could have gone up a tiny bit. Be
Yeah.
Right Back's definitely one of them. But yeah, it is just so fucking heartbreaking in like the best way.
And also two brilliant performances as well.
Also very nuanced. It's,
Yes.
again, it's not like anything super big flashy happens. Like, you don't see the crash happen or
Yeah.
anything. Which is even more heartbreaking, because we all know what's happened. It's like, I mean, let's be honest, who hasn't sat at home when a loved one has been out and you've not heard from them for hours, and like, that's
Yeah.
obviously your worst thought, is the police turning up. And that scene where the police turn up at her house and
She
they don't even
knows.
say anything, she just
Yeah.
walks back into the house sobbing, because yeah, you No, it's like your
It's
worst
just
fear is coming true.
heartbreaking. And I think what's so good about that episode as well is it's not just about one thing. It's about grief and technology, which the best episodes blend things, don't they? Like, obviously you've got the grief of her losing her partner, her finding out she's pregnant is brutal.
Yeah.
And then also the whole idea of no one actually knowing who someone genuinely is through their social media. And it's just so sad. Like, and the whole time all you can think is you can't even blame her for doing it.
No, of course not. Like,
Mm,
it's that whole idea of everybody grieves differently, because like,
yeah.
the people around her who like start to suspect that something's going on, like the only people that would understand are obviously people that have gone through it themselves, and that's
Mm,
just the truth when it comes to grief. Like, nobody will ever understand on an intimate level, but if you've never experienced that particular kind of trauma, then you're not really in a position to judge how people handle it.
yeah,
And
completely.
that's very much what Be Right Back is. Be Right Back also really hits still today, because I think of the conversation going on around AI and the fact that, like you just said, the technology in the episode couldn't completely encapsulate or actually even come close to
Hmm.
the guy himself, because everyone's not who they say they are
Hmm.
exactly on social media. Everyone puts forward some kind of persona. Most people don't put their whole lives
Yeah.
online, so like, how can you learn? And that's kind of the hard
Well,
argument
like
with
that
AI
bit where
right
she says
now.
something about how he's missing like a birthmark or a mole or something because in any
Yep.
photos you wouldn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so,
There's
oh
this
my God.
intimate details, and yeah, not to get too much into it, but it really just struck a chord watching it now, with the whole conversation going on with AI about how like people that are using it to completely replace other people,
Relationships. Yeah.
or like relate or stuff like that in
Yeah.
any capacity. It's like, obviously this episode is why it's
Mhm.
never going
Yeah.
to work, because there are parts of being human that nobody is ever going to
Yeah,
understand,
completely.
no matter if you believe in science or religion or whatever your belief or faith that you follow. Nobody's ever going to fully understand
Mhm.
being human.
And I also think this episode hits a lot harder when you start to get older and you're in your own long-term, serious, loving relationship. Because don't get me wrong, everyone knows what it's like to miss people or to grieve. Like, sadly, most people know how that feels. But like, yeah, when you just have like spent an extended period of your life with someone and can't imagine life without them, the watching that episode just feels so
Mm-hmm.
much more heartbreaking,
Yeah.
especially the little intimate details moments.
It also, I think, really highlights one of the worst things about losing somebody, and I think it's the bit a lot of people forget about. It's like, the initial loss is horrible and heartbreaking, and if you are fortunate, you'll have people around you that will support you, but the real hard-hitting part of it comes afterwards, where everybody starts to move on. You
Mm,
can't move on. People don't understand why you can't move on. You don't understand how they could move on, and it's
mm,
like, but then you feel it really is like a physical manifestation of being trapped by your own grief, because
mhm,
she gets technically what she wants,
mm,
but she doesn't want it anymore,
mhm.
because she's all he is a reminder is that he's not actually really
Yeah.
there anymore.
That's why that scream is just so heartbreaking, isn't it? That moment's so good.
It is another one where I kind of wish they'd ended it a little bit sooner.
Hmm.
The whole ending with him in the attic.
I think they should have ended it with her scream,
I
honestly.
think so too. I think
Yeah.
the ending with him in the attic was like I don't really get why that was included. I don't know if
Mm.
that was just because, at one point in history, people, and to an extent still are today, obsessed with everything having an ending.
Hmm.
Like, they had to know. I don't think that added, like, it obviously still made it quite sad, and it
Yeah.
really made it obvious that she was being trapped by her grief.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was needed.
No,
So maybe if
I
they'd
agree.
cut that bit off, maybe then I could have moved it up
Yeah,
into
that's
S
actually a
tier.
very
I
good
don't know.
point. Yeah.
Maybe that's what holds it back. But
Completely.
no, Be Right Back is a classic Black Mirror episode, because it's also part of the first season, and it's
Yes.
just it's real good. It's a
It's
good one.
beautiful. The final episode in the A tier is Black Museum. And this one's really interesting because I think some people would call it S tier, but I think there are just some corny parts that stop that for me. I don't know about you.
I think, again, it's because it is almost a very similar structure to another one that we have in S tier.
Yes.
Um,
Which does it
your
better,
That does
unfortunately.
do it better. So I don't know if it's like the Americanization of it. I
Very
hate
good
that we
point.
always bring it back to that, because I do appreciate like Charlie Brooker is still involved in
Oh
production
yeah,
of
no,
the
no,
episodes.
completely.
It's not as binary as because it was Americanized, but
Mhm.
like there is an Americanness to it
Yeah,
that I think just
especially lots later on.
As British viewers, but also long time watchers of Black Mirror as well, like it kind
Mhm.
of lost. One of the reasons I think I liked Black Museum so much is because it very much felt like a lot of bang for your buck. Like
Yeah.
I like stuff that has mini segments in it, because
Yes.
I
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like
Like a
I
clip
don't know, has
show.
it, yeah, pretty much. And it's like a lot of the time short stories, I really enjoy them, because I don't know, as I get older, or like my ADHD gets worse, I don't know what it is, my attention span
Yeah.
is just not what it used to be. This is why if I don't fixate on something, I cannot concentrate on it. I'm sure a lot of people relate.
I
um
also think there is something to be said for when something's short, it kind of has to be like more,
oh
you
no,
know?
for sure,
Mhm.
definitely. But that's why I think I did really like Black Museum. And other
Mm.
than the fact I thought the mini episodes and then the whole overarching story was really good,
Mhm.
I think it was just enjoyable to watch because I only had to focus for so
Yeah.
long.
I mostly love Black Museum for there's two storylines in it I love. One is the dad.
Yes.
Um that was heartbreaking. I thought that was
Mm.
brilliant on a lot of levels. But the one I really loved was the doctor, because that was just like body
Oh,
horror. I loved
yeah.
that. Like him like cutting off pieces of himself to get off. I was like,
Mm.
I mean, loving like Cronenberg and stuff, like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's
True,
just
so
something about
true.
that which is like that line between like sex and violence is just so
Mm.
good. And I feel like Black Mirror doesn't really do that often, which it
Mm.
could do when you think about it. Like the way that tech is going to start playing more and more into sexual gratification. Like look at sex robots and AI
Mm.
bots and all these things. Like I'm surprised we're not seeing more of that in Black Mirror. Maybe we will in another
Mm.
season or two.
Possibly part of the reason we're not is because I feel like it might pigeonhole it into that
Yeah,
genre.
true.
Well, actually, just like I don't think it will, but I feel like maybe they think it could
True.
if they focus too much. Because I will admit, whether you love the episodes or hate them, wherever they fall, there is a lot of variety in Black Mirror, both good
Mhm.
and bad. But I do agree. I am surprised they haven't done a little bit more with
Surely
it.
they will. Just one episode,
Do you know the mini story I actually really liked, and it was the one with the bear
Really?
and the mum. Was it the mum that got put in the
Yes.
bear?
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting because
Mhm.
again, it was another example of like not letting go in your grief and how it can
Yeah.
destroy you and your future relationships. And also, it's just the idea of being
Sad.
trapped is fucking terrifying.
Yeah. Well, it was similar to a bit in White Christmas in that way, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. But yeah, Black Museum's good.
Yeah,
I found the guy in it is perfect level of creepiness,
yeah, for
which was
sure. I
good.
also think it's a good one to rewatch because obviously, when you know the ending of it, you
You
rewatch it
see how
and
it
you
ties,
see
yeah.
how it ties, but also
Yeah.
you see the curator of the museum, how like he's
Mm.
reacting
Yeah.
to like obviously the drink she gave him and
Hmm.
things, like it's like
Yeah.
ooh,
And
like it really was
I
building
also
up
think
well.
like it's another example of how it's cool to see the continuation of the tech in the show,
Mm-hmm.
which of course White Christmas did as well. I don't know, call this a hunch, but I feel like they're going to do another one like this,
And I would
maybe in
love
the
it because
next season.
yeah, whilst if you can't already guess, the episode obviously we're comparing it to is White Christmas.
Yeah.
Whilst I do think it was not as good as White Christmas, I would be interested to see them try it again in a
Yeah, me too.
different situation because
I'd
I do
respect another
think
attempt for sure.
yeah, it worked. It
Mm.
worked well. It does work.
That was the A
That
tier.
that is the A tier. We're now in the final moments. Don't know how long this episode has been for you guys. It's been a while for us. We're
We're
enjoying it.
we're about, what are we, an hour and a half?
Yeah, something like that. Hopefully the episode won't be that long. Leanna's magical editing skills. But to try not to linger a little too much, there's a couple of these we might zoom past. So the first one in our S tier is the entire history of you, which we've mentioned a couple of times
Mhm.
leading up to this tier.
Yes. I just think this is a beautiful episode in like a really horrid way. Um, just how much he loves his partner. And obviously he portrays that and he exhibits that in the complete wrong way. But I just relate to that episode so much, having been in, having been in relationships like that and being human and just having that hunch, people always say trust
Mhm.
your hunch. Social media really lends itself to like becoming obsessed with a partner's life, and you just become almost this person who you don't even recognize, and it's just so
Mhm.
sad. And it all stems from his love for his wife and his family, but also partly his ego. And
Mhm.
it's such a brilliant episode in that it's this brilliant balance between futuristic tech but very modern feelings.
Yes, for
I
sure.
love it so much.
For me, it was the trope I really like is the unreliable narrator.
Yes.
And it's like, I could be wrong, but I think it might have been one of Sharon Osbourne's autobiographies. It's a bit my mom quotes all the time because she
Mm.
loves it. But basically, the like forward of the autobiography is something along the lines of, these are the events that happened according to like my memory of them.
Oh, I
So
love
it's that
that.
whole idea of like the way that you remember stuff is not always going to be accurate. Like probably
Mhm.
pretty much everybody's memory is inaccurate to an
Yeah,
extent.
yeah,
So
of
to
course.
live in a world where you can be having an argument with someone and go, oh, actually, is that such a good thing?
No,
This
yeah, it's
episode puts forward the answer is no.
and
Because
it asks that question, doesn't it? Like, is ignorance bliss? And
yes,
just all
yeah.
these sad, sad questions, and it
Mm-hmm.
also asks a lot about like relationships as well, I guess. Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you tell the truth all the time, or is it better to not know the truth sometimes? And I
Yeah.
don't know, it's just so heartbreaking because look how miserable he is in the end. Like, it's just so sad.
So sad, but such a good episode.
Yes.
Which again we could talk about for ages,
I mean,
but
it's basically most of S tier are
just
pretty
fantastic stories.
sad but brilliant,
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
mean next is one that is universally acclaimed, and
yeah,
that is White Bear.
yeah.
Whew.
One of those ones, like I said, not everything has to have a shock twist, but when it does.
I mean, I know a lot of people find the twist silly, and don't get me wrong, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of her being punished again and again and again is like,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the UK, I feel like it's a very real thing. Like
Oh
in
yeah.
the UK, we have this certain treatment of big time criminals, right? In
Mm-hmm.
the US, it's kind of like you get a true crime documentary, whereas in the UK, it's more kind of like everyone's heard of them, but it's not like they've had this big doc. It's like you get all those dodgy books and stuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows the Morse murderers and everyone knows this person and this person. And I've always found that really interesting, like the way we treat serial killers as opposed to Americans. Like, you see like in America, there's almost like this like idolization of killers. In the
Mm-hmm.
UK, it's very much like screw them, kill them, da da da. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like a witch hunt mentality, isn't it here? And I think White Bear got that perfectly, which is
I think
partly due
so
to it being
too.
a Channel
Yeah.
4 episode, but
And then
it's
it,
so good.
yes. And then it also had like there's nothing like worse than being betrayed, like especially by a TV show. And
Yeah.
like you're built up to care about this person. Like I said, it's not the only episode that does this, but you're built up
Mm,
to care about this person. So when it happens, you're like, oh my god, I feel so bad for them. I shouldn't, but now I can't help it. And it really just shows how like fucking fucked up and complex human emotions
mhm.
are. And I think, like you said, it's so interesting how you bring up like the UK's treatment of serial killers and the US's treatment of serial killers. I feel like the US's version is like very much more detached.
Yeah.
Like that's why the idolization comes into it, because
Yeah.
it's like I really feel like the media over there just does not treat them like they're people. They
Well, it
treat
treats
them
them more
like
like entertainment or
they
characters
do. And they
almost. Yeah.
also treat them as if evil is the root cause of everything,
Yeah.
which we know is not true.
Yeah.
And in the UK, we have a much more, I guess, like say, intimate approach of you don't want to believe that somebody could
Yeah.
could do that. And like I said, it's very hard when you say have an episode like this where you've seen the torment that she's been
Mhm.
through, and then you find out what she did, and it's
Yeah.
like she did a horrible thing, but it's like,
Mhm.
but now she, because she doesn't remember it, it makes you think about the whole, again, like nature versus nurture argument of like, maybe if that person had been in
Well,
a
I
different
guess to
environment.
me, one of the big differences is that in the US, it seems like people just don't talk about the victims, whereas in the UK, we really talk about victims.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the anger comes from so much, isn't it? Is and I
That's
think
very
that's
true,
why, in
yeah.
particular, in White Bear, it's a couple and a child as their victim,
Mm-hmm.
because we have stories like that in the UK, and
Mm-hmm.
it drives people fucking bonkers. And I know it's happened in the US, but those don't feel like the ones that get famous. in
No,
the
do you know what?
US.
You are right. Not to, like I said, name any names of cases because I don't want to like
Mm,
trigger anyone or anything because they are really harrowing. But like there are certain ones when you think of like killings and stuff that have
mm,
happened here, they do tend to be named after the most prolific victim
yeah,
as opposed to the killer. Whereas
yeah,
in the US,
yeah.
like again, I guess well, it's just the media, isn't it?
Different
But
media, isn't
that
it?
is very true. And I guess that's why something like White Bear did only work when it came out by the production company that produced it.
Hmm.
Very much a sign of the times, but a very
Yes.
good episode.
Very intimately British, that episode, I would
Mm.
say.
Moving on to
Mm.
something
Very
so far
American.
away from White Bear in every aspect is San Junipero.
What a beautiful episode.
One of the best episodes ever.
The
And it
people
goes
that
against everything that we've been talking about that makes a Black Mirror
the
episode.
people that say like, "Oh, I don't like it because it's happy," it's like, no, actually, sometimes that's like a really nice break
Mm-hmm.
from all the sadness. Because the thing is, the concept is still so fucked, but they
Mm-hmm.
managed to find like the beauty and the happiness and the
Mm-hmm.
love within that concept,
Mm-hmm.
and oh, it's just so
I
lovely.
also just say that, like I said, the writing, like you said, is so beautiful and the characters are so well fleshed out
Hmm.
that I forgive everything that I almost demonize other episodes for. So, like,
Yeah,
does it fit into the concept of Black Mirror? It does, but not as much as some of the episodes that we've actually put lower down.
yeah,
It's also super Americanized, but it is like, and for once, I'm not even going to put it down to the queer agenda coming out again because, yeah, obviously, I fucking love the queer
hmm,
representation in it. I love that, but I do just think it just worked as a beautiful story anyway. Like it was such a palette refresher. I
yeah,
think in that season, like it
completely.
popped out of nowhere, and I was
Yeah,
like just left sobbing.
yeah.
But I was like, I'm gonna watch this again
And
and again. And
also, even if we're not even talking about Black Mirror, we're not talking about like the episode. Oh my god, the music is,
mm-hmm.
and that's not something you think of when you think Black Mirror, but
No,
the score for that episode is beautiful.
it
It's been
really
on
felt
my
like a short
writing playlist
film.
ever since, you know? Oh,
No,
yes, that is
literally
so
though.
true. It
Yeah.
feels the most like a short film. That and
Mm-hmm.
Beyond the Sea.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree.
Hmm.
So again, San
Mm.
Junipero, this is one that genuinely, if anybody was interested in us doing more of a fleshed out episode on to pick apart,
Mm,
I would, or a mini-sode, I would do it because I just think
yeah.
it is not just one of the best episodes of Black Mirror. I do actually think it's one of the best episodes of television.
Yeah.
I like it does just stick with me,
Hmm.
and I'll die on that hill.
Yeah. I mean, I'll put it this way, like, so my boyfriend, he's obsessed with sci-fi and like scary sci-fi, horror, dystopian sci-fi, right? And he loves Black Mirror, but his favorite episode is San Junipero. After one watch, he was like, "That's
Yep.
my favorite," and so I just, it's unexpected, and it just shows that the execution was just perfect,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely perfect. Like if they did anything else, any part of it slightly different, it might not have
Oh
worked the
yeah,
way it
it was
did.
stitched together so beautifully. Like I
Yes.
really can't floor it. It's one of the ones I can't floor.
So this next one is definitely my second place episode, and that is
Mm-hmm.
Shut Up and Dance. What a fucking episode of television!
Yeah, it's one
Like,
of those ones I've only watched once. I don't think I'll ever watch it again because it
mhm,
is very upsetting. I also don't think it obviously it has the impact watching it so much the second time around,
yeah.
obviously.
You say that
Mm,
it has an impact in a different way. Because even
yeah.
just in the beginning when he closes his laptop and he freaks out knowing, and just
Yeah.
oh, and the way he,
Again,
when he pisses himself
mm-hmm.
when he's in the bank and things like that, you're just like, they were so clever in getting you to empathize with him.
Yeah, the actor they
Oh
chose as well,
my
like
god, Babyface
you
was important, very important. Also,
oh yeah.
watching it again is brilliant because if you think about moments like when his sister takes his laptop and he freaks out and he puts a lock on his door and
Yeah.
things, and it all just, oh, it is so
Mhm,
disgusting.
mhm.
Watching it with someone else was so, I want to say it was entertaining, but it wasn't. It was just
Mhm.
sad. Like, so I was watching it with
No, but it
my
is, but that's
boyfriend,
what we
and
said.
I was sending Sky videos
Yeah.
of his reaction. I was filming him secretly, and he just turns to me and he was like,
Yeah.
he just
But you do.
silent. It took,
Mhm,
but the thing is, it took him a minute
mhm,
because your mind automatically goes to that really dark place. You
mhm.
don't want to think that
No,
you're
of
right.
course not. Yeah.
Oh, it's horrible. It's so horrible. But the thing that really got me is, when he has to fight that guy in the little hilly area. So Dan didn't, that's my boyfriend, he didn't clock straight away that he killed the guy, because you're empathizing with the kids so much. I think a lot of people probably don't clock that at first, because I clocked it straight away, and I imagine you did as well. But yeah, he didn't. He was like, no, he didn't. That's so dark. And I was like, yeah, no, he did. That's why he's covered in blood. And the guy was doing the exact same thing that Kenny was. And Dan was like, how do you know? I'm like, because if you watch it back, he says something like,
They
you
say
too,
something
huh?
very,
Yeah.
yeah, they
And
do say
it's like,
something very similar to, because
oh,
that's it as well. It's never explicitly said, but it's obviously
oh, it's horrific. His
highly
mum on the
inferred.
phone.
His mom on the phone, and also this is actually another one where I would say music, that Radiohead song at the end, what perfect use of, and then the flashing of
The
all of
lights
the
on his
people
face.
involved, and
It's just so heavy. Like, if there was anything in my life I could erase from my brain and watch again, I know people name so many different films and everything. It's not even a question for me. It is Shut Up and Dance. Like, that is the most. Oh,
I could be totally wrong, because I know we said that White Bear had a similar-ish concept, but I've actually never seen anything like that where you are put in a position to sympathize with someone like that prior to knowing what they did. Because I feel like, because obviously there have been like certain books or shows or stuff released where you've had a character like that who you know who they are, and then they go through aspects to humanize them.
true.
But this is the first time I've seen it where you see them as a human before anything else, and I think, like I said, that's even harder, because
Yeah.
even if you do sympathize with somebody after the fact, it's like, you know, you're always like, well, no, horrible person, terrible person, but then it's like, then you have to question, similar to White Bear, it's like, but I felt really bad for this
But
person.
then you feel disgusting for still feeling a bit bad for
Yes.
them, because, like, after
No,
Shut Up and Dance, I'm
exactly.
like, why am I feeling bad for him? He's
I know, but it's
vile.
like, it really just shows like, it was just a really good example of how media manipulates us, and
Yeah.
like how when stuff is staged, and again how fucked
Mm,
up human emotions are,
yeah.
because you're right, you feel that episode, like, it's kind of almost similar to like what we talked about in when we talked about Lady Vengeance like ages ago,
Mm,
about how you almost feel complicit because you had
yes.
sympathy for, like, in the case of this episode, you had sympathy for this character that you doesn't just go away, it
Yeah.
doesn't just disappear at the
No,
end of the
completely.
episode, like it fades very slowly, but
Yeah.
you just feel so fucking empty.
Honestly, you feel so vile and dirty as well.
Yeah.
It's so rank. I one thing I do love about that episode is all the tech is real.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
literally
it's
could happen
very,
today.
oh, literally, yeah, there's no like futurism in it. It's all
Oh, it's
happening
horrible.
now.
And the cast is so good. Like,
Yeah.
Ron in Game of Thrones is
Mhm.
such a
Mhm.
likable, funny guy, and they cast him
Yeah.
in that role. But the thing
Yeah.
is, it was brilliant because he's still sleazy in Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
but it balances. And in this, like, the way he's forcing this kid to do these horrible things, and it's horrid. And
Mhm.
I love when you see that. I know we said already about the twist, but when you realize that they've gone through all this and they still reveal the information,
Yeah.
I was like,
Mhm.
like when the
It's
wife gets sent all the messages and
Yeah, it's
stuff,
one of
that
those
was really good.
episodes that you watch and it's like, I understand why Black Mirror fans love it. I understand why Black Mirror non-fans hate, never want to watch Black Mirror, because like, why do you want to watch something that makes you feel that horrible?
No,
I
I
don't know.
know.
I don't know why, but it was, the writing was just so good because it really drew you in, it made you believe, and then it had
And
like
there's
the
no
most
like,
horrific.
and it's not like, these big CGI moments or anything. It's just brilliant writing.
Yeah, amazing writing.
If I could ever write anything even a fraction as good as that, I'll
Mhm.
feel fulfilled. Anyway. But
But
yeah,
yeah,
anyhow,
that
that was
was,
Shut Up and Dance.
yeah.
I would say on a brighter note, but it's really not.
No, it's not.
The last one in the list is White Christmas. That is, it's just peak Black Mirror. What
Yeah,
more is
it
there
is.
to say?
It's for sure. But you know what's funny? I've spoken to a few people about this, and they don't agree.
See, I just
Black
think you're crazy if you don't think so.
White Christmas seems to be one that has people like really split again because of the kind of episode it is. Whilst you have obviously the mini stories that happen within it outside of the
Hmm.
place that they're in, it all pretty much takes spot in one place, which I love, but I know a lot of people don't because they find it boring. It's not stimulating enough. That's totally valid. For someone who, you know, has a neurological condition that requires stimulation at all times. I don't know why I get so much out of these episodes. Maybe it's because any episode that draws me in so much that doesn't make me want to go on my phone, I just have so much respect for, because it takes a lot for me to not need to be doing something else at the same time. And White Christmas was just, like I said, it was pre-Black Museum. So this was the first time Black Mirror had done anything like this. It was off the back of like the first series, so it had,
I think
like,
it was
really
after
built up.
season 2. It's like the final episode of season 2. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was.
That's why it's cool. You've got a Brit and an American, because it's just before.
That's a good point. Well, wherever it comes, it was just done so well.
So brilliant. I mean, this is another episode with a twist, and that twist, honestly, my stomach dropped in such a different way to Shut Up and Dance. You feel so terrible for him. Like, oh my God, it's awful. And I guess as well, oh my God, the first sequence, the dating thing, and you're seeing all these like creepy guys watching the date, and oh, that is awful. That always makes me so upset and uncomfortable every single time when he's like, delete your hard drives, and I'm like, oh my God, like,
no.
And that's the worst bit about that, is those people exist. Oh, no.
It's so funny because the top 5 episodes that we've put in our S tier are all super unsettling, apart from Junipero. So it's like either it needs to be queer or it needs to be super unsettling for us to really put it up there. But honestly, I don't really know what to say about White Christmas other than the fact that it's very good. It ties in a lot of the stuff that we liked about all the other episodes, like literally ties in some of the aspects of it. Other things is just like the tropes or the writing style. I think it was around that era that Black Mirror was peak. As much as I have enjoyed episodes after that, I really do feel like it's kind of just been going on a downward spiral. We kind of touched on this again. This is the official last name drop, but we kind of touched on this in the episode we recorded before this, like the Black Mirror review and ranking one. But how I just haven't really felt that Black Mirror feeling in a while.
I would say the last one for me was probably Shut Up and Dance, because as much as I like USS Callister, it's a bit too polished. I would say Shut Up and Dance is the last one where I thought,
I think for me, it was probably Crocodile. However, I did forget about Crocodile until recently.
So there is something to say about that.
That's what I mean. Like as a whole show, it really has just been like.
And I think that's because it doesn't really manage to maintain anymore that good balance between like the human emotion and the tech, and that is the core of Black Mirror.
But I have to wonder now, and this is a question I'll pose to our listeners: are we beyond the need for Black Mirror now? Is that what's happened?
True.
I feel like the answer could very much be yes. I do feel like there's a lot more to explore. Like I mentioned in our other episode, how one of the reasons I was quite disappointed in the most recent season is because I think that, considering everything that's happened in the last 3 years, there was a lot that they could have explored, and they didn't really touch upon any of it.
Well, I think the only way Black Mirror could truly survive is if they left longer between each season, and like you say, really address certain things that have really risen up in the last few years. So like, I'm quite surprised there was no chat GPT.
That's what I mean.
Mention.
There was no
I think South
AI.
Park's done
There was no. Exactly, but like I said, there was no AI. There was no like, I know everybody hated when TV shows and stuff started to put COVID in, but I don't mean as in like, I mean like the isolation, the cut off from humanity, how we all went fucking crazy in our homes and we just have to deal with it. Those kind of aspects I expected more to be explored.
And like not necessarily exact riffs from life, but just like pulling at like feelings we've had over the last few years. So like isolation.
Because you kind of summed it up perfectly. The best episodes of Black Mirror tied together emotion and technology very well, and I just don't think it's doing that anymore. No. If it is done with that era, then I think I'm maybe done with Black Mirror.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I wasn't too fussed about this latest season, and I just don't see myself being excited about the next one, quite honestly. And I think a lot of people unfortunately are feeling the same way.
But do let us know, because, again, this is coming from 2 people that have watched Black Mirror from the beginning, from the Channel 4 era, also 2 people from the UK. So that really does have a play into it. So I'd be interested to just hear how people feel about it now,
Definitely.
what your tier lists or rankings would be, or even just your favorite episode and why. You know, are there any episodes that we put really low down that you would actually fight for? Because that's always really interesting. Any of our social medias, we're at W Noise Podcast everywhere. There'll be links below this episode on both YouTube and Spotify. We're hopefully, we say this quite frequently, we're hopefully back now a little more. We might have more frequent episodes. If you don't hear from us too much over September, it's because we're getting prepared for the 7 Days of Horror returning in October. So do look forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, I think that's all I kind of really have to say today.
Same. I'm kind of Black Mirrored out now.
Yeah, a little bit. Oh yeah, that's it for Black Mirror now. We're done. So we're going to be moving on, but we're moving on to other stuff.
Well, like Sky said, you can find us on all our socials. And if you've gotten to this point, thank you so much for watching. It's been really fun.
Yeah.
And see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.